Since the NFL Super Bowl was just played 3 days ago, I've decided to relate our people, places, and things categories to the game of football. How does the name Wilson relate? Let's find out. Welcome to another episode of the Cuz Wilson Show, where we talk about people, places, and things named Wilson. Last week we found out what Wilson had to do with Coors beer, and we also found out about a bird brain named Wilson who has 4 boyfriends. If you missed it, you can go back to all of our episodes and check them out from our webpage at cuzwilson.com. I'm your host and Wilsonologist, Kenny Wilson. In this week's episode, I connect the name Wilson in many ways to the Super Bowl. Since the Super Bowl was just played a couple of days ago, I'm going to dedicate this episode to football. Now, that's not footy or soccer, that's American football. I have to say that because people from all over the world are going to be listening to this. In this week's people category, we're going to talk about a Wilson who went to the Super Bowl 4 times in a row. No other team has ever done that. He was one of the main reasons why there is a AFC or American Football Conference and an NFC or National Football Conference in the NFL today. And that's what the Super Bowl is played for, is for the champion between those two conferences. And this Wilson was so important to the game that we continue to celebrate his life in our places category with a couple of brand new places named in his honor. In our things category, we talk about the Duke. And I'm not talking about the actor John Wayne, who, interestingly, attended Wilson Middle School in Glendale, California. This Duke has been on the field at every Super Bowl since 1941, and he was there just this last Sunday. Well, today I'm battling a little cold and I have a little raspy voice, so I'm going to do a little bit less talking this time. In today's people category, I dug around for some great information, and I had my friends Larry and Mary from Notebook LM do an instant replay for us.
Have you ever heard a story like this? A guy builds a pro sports team from nothing, owns it for more than 50 years, and then, for his last act, he just gives it all away. It's an incredible story, so let's get into it. It all starts with this number, $1.2 billion. That is the staggering value of the gift that Ralph Wilson Jr. left behind when he passed away back in 2014. And it all came from selling his life's work, the NFL's Buffalo Bills. But here's the kicker, the part that's truly wild. It wasn't just the amount of money, it was the instructions he left. Wilson demanded that every single penny of that $1.2 billion be spent within just 20 years. I mean, in the world of big-time philanthropy, that's practically unheard of. He didn't want a foundation that would last forever. He wanted to see real, massive, immediate change. So you gotta wonder, right? How did he even build a fortune like that? And what kind of person decides to give it all away with that much urgency? Well, that's what we're here to figure out. So his final play on the field of life created the Ralph C. Wilson Jr. Foundation. It's a grant-making organization with a super clear mission: make life better for the people in the 2 places he loved the most. That's Western New York, home of his Bills, of course, and his own hometown, Southeast Michigan. But really, to get the gift, you've got to get the man. So let's turn back the clock a bit and meet Ralph C. Wilson Jr., long before he was a household name in football. You know, his character was really forged in the fires of World War II. He served in the Navy, commanding a minesweeper in both the Atlantic and the Pacific. He was even officially commended for his courage, stamina, and initiative. And honestly, those 3 words pretty much defined the rest of his life. His own foundation puts it perfectly with this quote. He was a guy who kept his word, hated the spotlight, and just flat out believed in hard work, a true Midwesterner through and through, even when he was a giant in the sports world. So, after the war, Wilson got into business. And I mean business. Trucking, construction, media, you name it. He was a huge success. But there was always this one thing, his real passion, that started when he was just a kid: football. And that passion, it led him to the single biggest gamble of his entire career. See, back in 1959, he joined a small group of guys who wanted to do the impossible, take on the absolute monolith that was the National Football League. They actually called themselves the Foolish Club. Think about that for a second. They knew everyone thought they were a complete joke, a league that was doomed from the start. But Wilson, he saw an opportunity. So he put his money where his mouth was, founded the Buffalo Bills, and became one of the godfathers of the AFL. And in those first few years, it really looked like their foolish bet was about to go bust. The whole league was so fragile. I mean, if just one of those 8 teams went under, the entire thing could have just collapsed like a house of cards. This is where the story gets really good. The Oakland Raiders were flat broke. They were about to fold. No, instead of letting a rival team die, Wilson does something you never see today. He personally loaned them $400,000. It was proof he wasn't just trying to build a team. He was trying to build a league. That one move, it basically saved the AFL. And Wilson's vision paid off, big time. His gamble didn't just launch a new league, it helped create the modern NFL that we all watch every Sunday. And the vision just kept paying off. In '64, he helped land a huge TV deal that put the AFL on the map. 2 years later, he's at the table negotiating the AFL-NFL merger. Then his own team, the Bills, becomes an absolute powerhouse. It all led to his induction into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 2009, a total no-brainer. And speaking of that powerhouse team, remember this number, 4. In the early 90s, his Buffalo Bills did something no team had done before and no team has done since. They went to 4 straight Super Bowls. Just an unbelievable run of dominance. And you know, he was never one of those owners hiding up in a skybox. For 54 years, he was the one and only owner the Bills ever knew. He was always there, on the sidelines, a real part of the team and the Western New York community. But for a guy who won so much in the world of football, you could argue his greatest victory, his most lasting legacy, actually came after the final whistle had blown on his life. When Ralph Wilson died in 2014 at 95 years old, his final instructions were crystal clear. The team he'd poured his heart and soul into, it was to be sold, and all the proceeds, over $1 billion, were to be funneled into the foundation he'd set up a few years earlier. And just like that, the sale completely transformed his legacy. All that passion he had for football was basically converted into fuel for building up communities. Just in its first year, the foundation gave out over $60 million in grants to projects in those 2 regions he called home. And look at the kind of work they're doing. It's everything. Building parks and trails, supporting early childhood education, giving resources to family caregivers, sparking economic growth. It's a total, all-around approach to making a community stronger from the ground up. His wife, Mary, really said it best. Football was his passion, no doubt about it. Bringing the Bills to Buffalo was his life's work. But through this final act, that passion became something else entirely. A legacy that will touch countless lives, long after we've all forgotten the scores of those games. So it leaves you with this question, right? For a man who built a league from scratch and a team into a legend, his final act says it all. He believed the ultimate win wasn't just what you build, but what you do with it. He spent his whole life building for the future, but he spent his fortune building for right now.
Thank you for that insight. I love listening to you guys. Did you find out the answer to last week's Cuz Quest? The question last week was, what U.S. Vice President was named Wilson? And the answer is Henry Wilson, the Vice President of Ulysses S. Grant. Now, this week's Cuz Quest has 2 parts. Who was Henry Wilson named after? And what was Ulysses S. Grant's name at birth? Here are some hints. Henry's father was an alcoholic, and he had to take a cold bath often. The second one, I'll give you a big hug if you know Ulysses S. Grant's name at birth. Hey, squirrel, Simpson is the maiden name of Ulysses S. Grant's mother. But don't take that as a hint from this week's Cuz Quest, because the registrar at West Point thought his middle name was Simpson too. For our places category, I decided to continue with the legend of Ralph C. Wilson.
So, have you ever wondered how a city actually reclaims its waterfront? I mean, especially a city known for its industrial past. How do you take back that precious shoreline and, give it back to the people? Well, we're going to dive into one of the most amazing urban transformations happening in America right now, right in Detroit. Okay, so you gotta picture this. For the better part of 100 years, this one key stretch of Detroit's riverfront was basically off limits. First, it was a massive rail yard. Then, for almost 30 years, it was a printing plant for the Detroit Free Press. It was all industry, all fenced off. A totally forgotten piece of the city. And now, just look at this. This is that exact same piece of land today. What was once a derelict industrial zone is now this absolutely stunning, world-class park. I mean, this one photo says it all, right? It just shows the incredible scale of this change. So the big question is, how on earth did they pull this off? To really get it, we have to go back to the beginning. For over a century, Detroit's relationship with its river was, well, it was complicated. As the mayor said, for a lot of folks, especially in Southwest Detroit, the riverfront just meant noise, weird smells, and a ton of traffic. It definitely wasn't a place you'd go for fun. But that all started to change about 2 decades ago. A new hero enters our story. The Detroit Riverfront Conservancy. They looked at that forgotten shoreline, and they saw something incredible. And they made a huge promise to the city. This was their whole mission. It's so simple, but it's also so powerful and incredibly ambitious. They weren't just trying to build a walkway. They wanted to create a destination, a place where every single person would feel welcome. And boy, have they been delivering on that promise. And the results? Well, they speak for themselves. It all started with connecting the shoreline. Today, we're talking 8 miles of connected trails and greenways. And those trails, they now connect over 100 acres of beautiful, reclaimed public space right on the water. And you know what they say, if you build it, they will come. The riverfront now gets almost 2 million visits every single year. It's become one of the most loved spots in the entire city. And the absolute crown jewel of this whole thing is the brand new $80 million, 22-acre Ralph C. Wilson Jr. Centennial Park. This thing is the centerpiece of the whole West Riverfront, and really a new landmark for Detroit. The reaction from everybody was just immediate and huge. Get this, over 55,000 people showed up for the grand opening weekend. You can just feel the energy in this photo. This wasn't just a ribbon cutting, it was a massive citywide celebration. So what's inside that makes it so special? Let's take a little tour. Over here, you've got the William Davidson Sport House, just buzzing with activity, basketball, pickleball, you name it. And then you've got the Delta Dental Play Garden, where kids are having the time of their lives on these incredible, gigantic playscapes. And seriously, this park is for everyone. It has everything from huge animal-themed slides to a water garden that's actually restoring the natural habitat. But here's the most important part. This whole design wasn't just dreamt up by some committee. It came from the community. Over 5,000 residents gave their input to make sure this park was truly theirs. And at the end of the day, this is what it's all about. This quote from John Hardig, who's a scientist and a board member, just captures the real impact perfectly. It's about creating a place where families make memories. It's a gift to the next generation. But this park is so much more than just a cool destination. Its real genius is how it acts as a hub, literally stitching the city back together in ways that just weren't possible before. You can see exactly how it works on this map. Before, neighborhoods like Southwest Detroit, Corktown, and historic Mexican Town were totally cut off from the river. Now the park and these new greenways give them a direct, safe, and beautiful path right to the waterfront. For many people, it's the first time in their lives they've had that. And this didn't just happen by accident. It was a careful, strategic plan. In 2023, the Southwest Greenway opened, creating that first critical link. Then in 2025, the park opened, creating the main destination. And the final piece of the puzzle comes in 2026 with the Gordie Howe International Bridge. It's going to have a special lane for people to walk and bike across, connecting seamlessly to trails in Canada. We're talking a huge boost for tourism and cross-border community. Now, this whole project isn't just about fun and games. It's also about healing the local environment and completely reshaping Detroit's identity for the future. Just think about this for a second. It's a crazy statistic. The Detroit River has lost 97% of its original coastal wetlands because of development. That's a vital habitat for thousands of species, just gone. But the water garden in Wilson Park isn't just pretty. It's actively rebuilding a piece of that essential ecosystem, bringing back something that was almost completely wiped out. And that commitment to the environment is part of a much bigger story. What this project is really doing is changing the entire narrative about Detroit. The city is shifting from that old Rust Belt label to a new reality as a leader in sustainable redevelopment. An industrial shoreline is now a world-class public space. A city of disconnected neighborhoods is becoming a true destination. When you look at the big picture, the Detroit Riverwalk and Wilson Park are this amazing model for other cities. They show what can happen when public vision and private resources come together. You can create these incredible spaces that don't just make life better for the people who live there, but also help attract new talent and businesses, fueling growth for the whole region. It really is proof that one single project, a park, can fundamentally change a city's story. It's just a testament to vision, to sticking with it, and to the power of community. And it leaves us with a really exciting question. With this kind of momentum, what chapter will Detroit write next?
I want to let you know about a place under the More button on our website. It is our Wilson's eBay storefront. On this storefront, you can find new and used products with Wilson on it, and a lot of them are Wilson sporting goods. Now, full disclosure, if you buy something from there, we get a little commission to help support our show so we don't have to have commercials. Now we get to move on to the things category and how a thing named Wilson relates to the Super Bowl.
All right, when you think about the biggest names in sports, Wilson's right up there, right? It's a giant. But the story behind that iconic W? Well, it's a wild one, and it starts in a place you would never guess in a million years.
And this quote, man, it just gets right to the heart of the whole thing. Zero automation. Think about that. In our world, where everything is automated, one of the most famous products on the planet is still made by hand. It's all about pure old-school craftsmanship. And that tradition, as we're going to see, goes back a long way.
Okay, so let's start with what we all know. For most people, Wilson basically is football. I mean, their ball, the Duke, has been the official football of the NFL since the company and the league first teamed up way back in 1941.
And the scale of that partnership, it's just staggering. I want you to really think about this for a second. Every single touchdown, every game-winning drive, every Super Bowl moment for more than 80 years has happened with a Wilson football in someone's hands. It's actually the longest-running partnership like it in all of American sports. That's incredible.
So you'd think a company that's this legendary, this deep in sports culture, would have some epic origin story about athletics, right? Like it started in a gym or on a field somewhere. Well, you'd be wrong. Not even close. Yeah, the real story isn't about pristine tennis courts or perfectly manicured football fields. Nope, it's a lot grittier than that. It's a story that, and I mean this quite literally, goes from guts to glory.
That's right, a Chicago meatpacking plant. That's where it all started. Not in some high-tech sports lab, not at a fancy athletic club, but a slaughterhouse. Let that sink in for a second.
Okay, so how on earth does that happen? Let's break it down. You go back to 1914. A meatpacker called Sulzberger's and Sons had this, let's call it a leftovers problem. What do you do with all the animal byproducts? So their solution was to start a whole new company, Ashland Manufacturing, just to turn those leftovers into stuff they could sell. After a couple of quick name changes, bam! Wilson Sporting Goods was born.
And this just shows you how wild their business was at the start. They weren't really a sports company. They were a byproduct company. So yeah, they made tennis rackets and baseball shoes, but they also made violin strings, surgical sutures, even phonographs and ukuleles. Can you believe that? Ukuleles? It was literally anything and everything they could make to turn a profit from what was left over.
But pretty soon, the company realized its future probably wasn't in, ukuleles. It was in sports. And here's the brilliant part. They figured out how to use their very strange origins to their advantage and build an absolute empire, starting with the world of tennis.
So, the big question is, how does a meatpacker possibly dominate tennis? Well, the answer is strings. Turns out, animal intestines, what they call natural gut, made the absolute best, most responsive tennis strings on the planet. And, well, who had a better supply of that than a company born from a meatpacker? Nobody. This one product, a direct result of where they came from, was their golden ticket to the top of the tennis world.
So once they mastered the strings, it was only natural they'd move on to the rackets themselves. And they knocked it out of the park with the Jack Kramer autograph. This thing became one of the best-selling rackets in history. For decades, this was the racket, the absolute standard for pro players. And then came the legendary Pro Staff series. If you were around in the 80s and 90s, you know this one. This was the racket. Simple as that. If you were a champion, odds are you were using a Pro Staff. I'm talking about absolute legends like Pete Sampras and Steffi Graf. They just dominated the sport with this thing. And that legacy? It's still going strong today, right into the modern era. Just look at Roger Federer's custom RF97 autograph. That racket brought Wilson's top-tier reputation to a whole new generation of tennis fans and future champions.
Okay, so from the world of tennis, let's circle all the way back to where we started, the football. Because believe it or not, the story of how that ball is made today is just as amazing as the company's gritty beginnings.
5,000. What's that number? Well, that's roughly the population of Ada, Ohio. And since 1955, this tiny, unassuming town has been the one and only place on Earth where every single official NFL football is made. Wild, right? And remember that quote from the very beginning? Zero automation? Well, this is what that actually looks like. Each ball starts as 4 panels of genuine cowhide. They're sewn together inside out on these old-school vintage sewing machines. Then they have to be turned right side out using steam, a process that takes some serious strength. After that, an airtight bladder gets popped in, and every single one of those laces is threaded by hand. It's just pure, unbelievable craftsmanship. And you know, even the name stamped on the side of every ball has a heck of a story. It was originally called the Duke way back in '41 to honor Wellington Mara, the legendary owner of the New York Giants. Now, the name actually disappeared for a while after the big NFL-AFL merger, but they brought it back in 2006, right after Mara passed away, as a way to honor his incredible legacy.
So when you step back and look at the whole picture, it's just this incredible, only in America kind of success story. You've got a company that was literally born from the leftovers of a slaughterhouse, a company that used those unique resources to innovate, to pivot, and to eventually become this beloved global icon in sports. It's just amazing.
And this really says it all, doesn't it? From animal guts to aerodynamic science, Wilson literally transformed waste products into world-class championship-winning equipment. It kind of makes you wonder, right? In our modern world of robots and automation, is there still room for success stories built on nothing more than grit, ingenuity, and the skill of the human hand?
And now it's time for Wilson's in the News.
Disney Cruise Lines announces Tracy Wilson as their new Senior Vice President and General Manager as she takes over from the retirement of Sharon Siskey. In college basketball, number 14 University of North Carolina rallied from behind under rookie forward Caleb Wilson to beat arch rival number 4 Duke. Well, my voice is getting worn out, so for more Wilson's in the News, go to our website under cuzwilson.com, hover over the More button, and pull down to Cuz Buzz. Before you go, and before my voice runs out of steam, click the subscribe or follow button, and then share the show with any of your friends or family named Wilson so we can get the word out and grow our global community of Wilsons. See ya, cuz.